Imagine a scene straight out of an old Hollywood movie, but only it's not a movie, it's real life. So a train carrying some of the biggest names in showbiz, and among them the rising starlet Joan Crawford and her newlywed husband, and suddenly the doors swing open and in walks Tallulah Bankhead, a woman known for her scandalous affairs and outrageous remarks. Bankhead walks seductively over to the starstruck couple, her eyes twinkling with scandalous intentions. She flashes a dazzling smile at Crawford and purrs, "Darling, you're simply divine." Then, without missing a beat, she drops a bombshell that leaves everyone in the train gasping. "I've had a fling with your charming husband," she confesses, "and darling, you'll be next," end quote. A shocked Crawford managed to say, "I'm sorry, Miss Bankhead, but I love men," end quote. Tallulah smirked and walked away, leaving everyone stunned. There was no phrase for it back then, but today we'd say Tallulah Bankhead had absolutely zero filter. She was a wildfire, a force of nature who lived life on her own terms and wasn't afraid to speak her mind. Her scandalous encounter with Joan Crawford is just one of the many outrageous tales that make up the legend of Tallulah Bankhead. She lived a rebellious life and said whatever came to her mind. Even when she contracted a sexually transmitted disease, she told the doctor, and I quote, "I hope you don't think this has taught me a lesson," end quote. And she went on to continue her countless affairs with both men and women in an era where things like this was hush-hush. As the New Yorker notes, Bankhead claimed to have slept with over 500 people and was rumored to have had affairs with a slew of stars, including Hattie McDaniel, yes, I know, right? Billie Holiday, Greta Garbo, and Marlene Dietrich, which I did videos for all except Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday is on my list. There's just so many stories to uncover with her life, but let's start with the beginning, which is her childhood. But first, hey friend, welcome to my channel, Crane Allude, where we deep dive and break down the most iconic stars through history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so, and if you're already subscribed, please be sure to turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now let's get into this video. Fun fact that you guys may not know about her before we get into her childhood: Tallulah was the inspiration behind Cruella de Vil, down to the very husky voice and all the furs that she used to wear. She was also the first white woman to appear in Ebony magazine on the cover, and she fought a lot for civil rights also. She was a strong advocate for that. So once upon a time, on January 31st, 1902, in the small town of Huntsville, Alabama, a girl named Tallulah Brockman Bankhead was born to her parents, William Brockman Bankhead and Adelaide Eugenia Bankhead. Her family was kind of a big deal in the political world of the South, especially in Alabama. They were Democrats through and through. Her dad even held the prestigious position of the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives from 1936 to 1940, and her uncle and grandpa, both senators. She was born into privilege and wealth, living a life many could only dream of. Tallulah's entrance into the world was on the second anniversary of her parents' wedding, in a building that is now known as the Isaac Schiffman Building. But not everything was so rosy. Just 3 weeks after Tallulah's birth, her mom passed away due to blood poisoning, just like her grandmother, who died giving birth to her mom. Her father, William, heartbroken and lost, turned to alcohol and suffered from bouts of depression. And he was also gone a lot, so he didn't have much attention to really give to his daughters, although Tallulah was a daddy's girl and was very desperate for his attention. So Tallulah and her sister Eugenia were mostly raised by their paternal grandmother at the family mansion Sunset in Jasper, Alabama. Tallulah wasn't exactly the belle of the ball growing up. She was often overshadowed by her slim, prettier sister, according to historians. So she became a bit of a show-off, doing anything for attention, especially from her father. She learned how to cartwheel, sing, recited literature, and threw epic tantrums that often ended with her grandma dousing her with a bucket of water. She would even hold her breath until she turned blue if she wasn't getting her way. Tallulah's signature low, husky voice was due to chronic bronchitis she had as a child. She was a natural entertainer, always at the center of attention. She was good at imitating people and even claimed that her first audience included none other than the Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur. She had an amazing memory for literature and could dramatically recite poems and plays. As the girls grew older, they became quite a handful. They were getting into a lot of trouble, her and her sister, and almost uncontrollable, troubled youth. Their dad thought maybe a convent school would do the trick, and even though he was a Methodist, he still sent them to the Catholic school. So off they went to the convent of the Sacred Heart in Manhattanville, New York. They moved from school to school as their dad's political career took him closer to Washington, D.C. When Tallulah was 15, her aunt suggested she take better care of her appearance and go on a diet. This advice transformed Tallulah into a Southern belle, but the schools didn't really tame the girls. Both Eugenia and Tallulah had their fair share of relationships and affairs. Eugenia was married 7 times to 6 different men, while Tallulah, the more rebellious of the two, pursued a career in acting. Now, let's hop into her career. Imagine being 15, flipping through a magazine in your local drugstore and seeing your own face staring back at you. That's exactly what happened to Tallulah Bankhead. She had sent her picture into a contest run by Picture Play magazine, but she forgot one tiny detail: her name and address. So there was her photo in the magazine with a caption that read, "Who is she?" Her dad, who just so happened to be Congressman William Bankhead, saw the photo, recognized his daughter, and quickly sent a letter to the magazine with another copy of the photo. Off she went to New York City, ready to claim her prize. But the reality was a bit of a letdown. The contest win turned out to be a bit of a dud. She was paid $75 for 3 weeks on a movie called Who Loved Him Best and only had a minor role. She moved into the Algonquin Hotel, a hotspot for the city's artsy crowd. There she quickly became one of the gang at the hotel's bar. Now her dad had given her some advice before she left for New York City. He told her stay away from alcohol and men. And Tallulah, always the rebel, clapped back saying he didn't say anything about women and cocaine, end quote. Wild parties at the hotel introduced her to exactly that. She was playing around with the sniff powder, the coke, and the Mary J. You already know, YouTube, we have to filter, but she was rolling it up. She even joked about it, saying something like, Coca-Cola is a habit forming. I would know since I've been sniffing it for years. End quote. In 1923, she took her talents across the pond and made her debut on the London stage. Over the next 8 years, she performed in over a dozen plays, and her role in They Knew What They Wanted even won a Pulitzer Prize in 1925. And despite all her success on stage, living in Hollywood wasn't really her thing. But when she was offered $50,000 per film, which was a lot back then, even she couldn't say no to that. So she packed up her things and moved to Hollywood, where she continued to make waves with her wild parties and unapologetic personality. She also had a brief but successful career on radio and made appearances on television. In all, Bankhead amassed nearly 300 films, stage, television, and radio roles during her career. Known for her dazzling performances, she also gained a reputation for her wild parties and sharp wit. But behind the glitz and glamour, she was a woman who was as troubled as she was talented. Bankhead was a magnet for admirers, especially gay men who were drawn to her larger-than-life personality. Some of these fans became her helpers, or as she fondly called them, her caddies. As her lifestyle started to take a toll on her health, these caddies were there to offer her support. Unfortunately, Bankhead was wrestling with addiction. She relied on a dangerous mix of substances to help her sleep, and it got so bad that her maid had to tape her arms down to keep her from popping pills in her sleep. As time went on, she experienced accidents and episodes caused by lack of sleep and heavy substance use. She was hallucinating, seeing things that weren't there, talking to people that weren't there, and just kind of started to lose her mind a little bit. And despite her outgoing personality, she often admitted to feeling lonely. In an honest moment with playwright Tennessee Williams, she confessed, and I quote, "I'm 54 and I wish always, always for death. I've always wanted death. Nothing else do I want more," end quote. Bankhead was a firecracker, known for her boldness and quick wit. She loved to be the center of attention and wasn't shy about stripping down at parties and jumping in the pool with nothing on. She lived life on her terms, marrying fellow actor John Emery in 1937, only to divorce him 4 years later. When asked about remarriage, she said, and I quote, "You can definitely quote me as saying there will be no plans for a remarriage," end quote. Her personal life was filled with twists and turns. She had no children. Every time she got pregnant, she got rid of it willingly. In 1933, while performing in Jezebel, Bankhead nearly died following a 5-hour emergency hysterectomy. But guess why she had to have this hysterectomy? It was due to gonorrhea, which she claimed she had contracted from either Gary Cooper, yes, Gary Cooper, or George Raft. but she didn't know because she slept with both men around the time that she got it, so she wasn't sure where it came from. That is wild. But she told her doctor that she didn't learn her lesson. She said, "I hope you don't think this made me learn a lesson." She went right back to dating people, and people went right back to dating her too. I don't think they knew the severity of these illnesses like that during that time or really cared. I mean, Coca-Cola, if you catch my drift, was in everything during that era. They had that powder and everything, right? Soft drinks, hence where we got Coca-Cola from. It was more of a free time. When we look back then, we think of more glamorous and, you know, more well put together people and stuff like that. But it was crazy back then. All the stuff that is happening today was happening back then. It was just more hush hush and wasn't as spoken about. So when someone spoke about it, they just seemed more scandalous. But everyone was high as a kite, up in the clouds. Everyone was taking some form of substance. All your parents, great grandparents were lit, okay? And there wasn't as much regulations with these substances back then, to where it was just a norm. It was like a party substance, whether rich or poor. They were living life, okay? And they had a back alley where you could go terminate a pregnancy at every corner. It was wild back then, okay? So every time you hear people talk about the past and how much better it was, just know it was only better because things were more kept secret. Now everyone is just more open with what they do. So don't fall for that, you know. The generations past was much more classier and stuff. It was just in an appearance. Her flamboyant lifestyle and outspokenness landed her on the Hays Commission's Doom Book, which was a book with a list of actors deemed unsuitable for the public. MI5 called her an extremely immoral woman who had indulged in indecent and unnatural practices with Eton schoolboys, according to confidential files released by the Public Record Office today. Yes, you heard right, schoolboys. There was 5 of them that were involved in this scandal. One, the son of a lord, and another of a baronet, had to leave the public school, but the headmaster kept that scandal secret by refusing to cooperate with a special branch inquiry. This was during her time in Britain that this all happened. And I believe she was around 26 at that time, and there was a lot of rumors that stated that this is part of the reason why she left Britain, because of this scandal, and came back to Hollywood and didn't go back to Britain since, because it was starting to get out, you know, what was going on. MI5 secured a private letter to Eton parents in which the head denied anybody was expelled, but admitted 2 boys had been dismissed and 3 disciplined. Rumors swirled about her love life. She was linked to a string of men and women, including Hollywood icons, like we stated, Greta Garbo, Marlene Dietrich, Hattie McDaniel, Billie Holiday, all of that. All these women live wild lives too. And Patsy Kelly, who worked as her personal assistant, confirmed that they had been involved in an intimate situation. Now, Bankhead passed away on December 12, 1968 at age 66. The official cause of death was double pneumonia worsened by years of smoking and malnutrition. In the 50s, she was downing 2 bottles of whiskey and smoking 100 to 150 cigarettes a day, okay? So I can only imagine what toll that could have taken on her body. Her final words were a mumble request for codeine and bourbon. Despite often claiming to be broke, she left behind a fortune worth $2 million, equivalent to $16 million today, or $17 million. Bankhead may have been a troubled soul, but she lived her life with an intensity and passion that few could match. Her favorite color was said to be blood red and bourbon brown, so leave a brown or red heart in the comments for her if you watched this far, and be sure to thumbs up the video and comment below who else would you guys like to see. But most importantly, I want to know you guys' thoughts on this. Bankhead was a lot of people's icon, but I would say that her childhood probably is where a lot of her behavior stemmed from. I mean, losing your mom at birth, probably being blamed. She probably blamed herself for her mother dying. It probably weighed on her. I can't imagine the trauma that weighed on her. And then being a daughter of a politician, and you guys know, being a politician's daughter in any capacity is not easy. Even today we see they usually are the most troubled. Their parents are never home. They're raised by nannies. They have no attention. Even her holding her breath as a toddler, trying to end her life, you know, as a temper tantrum, is wild. And she said since she was young, all she ever wanted was death. Am I looking for sympathy for some of her behaviors? No, that's not what I'm doing. But I can understand wanting to die since you were a toddler, having these intakes, and you know, being wildly deprived of attention from the parent you love the most. Had to have some really tough consequences on her. But she did get involved in a lot of scandals that was just crazy, potentially spreading illnesses around. by still continuing her reckless behavior with sleeping around, knowing that, you know, and then over 500 people, sleeping with over 500 people is wild. Comment below your thoughts on that. No judgment, of course, but there is consequences to everything we do in life. As much as any piece of media you read about Tallulah or documentary, most would glamorize this life as free-spirited, and people looked up to her and wanted to emulate that same life. When you had like Marilyn Monroe's that came after, and so many other women that came after that looked up to Tallulah, they all wanted to emulate that type of carefree spirit, just sleeping around. And unfortunately, there was a lot that came with that too, the dark side of it, which people don't talk about. There's so many other stars and starlets from that era that dealt with similar situations that I have on my list to do videos for you guys. And it was just crazy back then. Now that would not fly today. Today you cannot brag about having an illness and still sleeping with people. You'd be canceled with the quickness. Imagine any celebrity coming up and saying that. Imagine Jennifer Aniston coming up saying, oh yeah, I have gonorrhea, but like, I didn't learn my lesson. I'm still sleeping with people. You guys would drag her to filth, right? I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. If you like the music you're listening to, the link is in the description. Until next time.